So nobody ever, prior to Western culture in the last couple of 100 years, was scared of a virus. Like nobody was sitting under the apple tree and then just like shat their pants and just decided that they had to run from an invisible virus. It's just didn't exist. No indigenous cultures ever have, viruses as part of their lore or their stories, their teachings. It's all a concoction of the modern Western mind and society. So yeah, like look at nature. Like how would we have possibly grown around the world the way we have if we were so susceptible to pathogens? We wouldn't be here. Same with STDs. Everyone always asks the question about herpes, but if herpes was so transmissible, would we not, unless you were celibate or a monk or something, like how would you not have it? Wouldn't everybody on earth have it if it was so? Because it's not like you just meet one person and that's it. Like by the very definition of transmissibility, the way we're taught, then everybody would have it. It's kind of like, it's almost impossible to imagine a world where there are, like, if these pathogens were so transmissible and infectious, then we just wouldn't be where we are. It'd just be impossible. So then the next question becomes, why are so many people sick, especially today? Well, first of all, you got to look at the relativity to the population size. That's number one. But second of all, just look at the state of people in general. Look at the state of the world in general. So if you take a look at it from that perspective, so many people are led away from balance from birth. So when we first come into the world, we come out in a sterile hospital. We're looking at people with masks where our umbilical cord is snipped way too soon. We're not, we're taken away from the mother almost straight away. If we're in a hospital, we're looking at fluorescent lights and stuff. Like there is almost nothing natural about the way we're brought into the world. So it starts there. Then it continues with indoctrination from your parents, being taken to doctors and giving antibiotics and vaccines. Going through the schooling system, which is literally just the Prussian educational system, is just designed to breed, willing and just people who are worker bees. It's just not designed to breed healthy humans. Then you're given the food pyramid, you're given pasteurized and processed food your whole life. So is it any wonder why people start getting flus and influenzas and die of something that is not actually a killer? You just die from the toxicity that you built up. And toxicity is built up through environmental toxins, the food that we bring in, but also the thoughts that we carry through our life and the stress. That all builds up toxicity in the body and breaks it down. It breaks the body down and makes it weak. So that's why we see people dying of influenza where that's not a natural thing. It's fine to have a flu because it's there to clean the body out. It's not natural to die from it. So we really have created for ourselves a system of weakness of mind and body and spirit. And that's why you see what you see around the world. To get a little more in depth then about what a virus actually is. So nature knows how to bring everything back to nature. So if a body is sick and decaying, then fungus and bacteria are there to help it bring it back down to nature. It serves no purpose anymore. Like a corpse, it doesn't rot from air, it doesn't rust. It's broken down by fungus and bacteria, which eat it away. They excrete out what we term as waste, but is really just fertilizer. It turns it back into dust. It turns it back into the soil. Then it can regrow into something else. That's like the matter that is used to bring forth new life. So that's what the role of microbiology essentially is. It's just bringing things back to balance, right? So that's essentially all it is. So for us, when we have, like, our cells are constantly reproducing and dying off. Our cells always die and new ones are being formed. We grow a new body roughly every 7 years. So the role, that doesn't just happen by itself. When there's cells like dead matter that needs to be broken down, otherwise we'd die. Then that's what bacteria and fungus and parasites do. They help us to break down anything that the body can't break down by itself. So they have a vital role to play. And they're like, most people I think by now know that we're mostly fungal, bacterial, parasitic, and viral DNA than we are human DNA. Like we're mostly microorganisms that we can't see, but that make up our whole living existence. And so when they can't perform their standard function, because by breaking something down that is either dead or decaying matter or an environmental toxin, then it produces waste. It has to produce a waste product. And if that waste product is too toxic or too great, it will actually kill the virus, bacteria. Sorry, not the virus. It will kill the bacteria, fungus, or parasite that is doing the breaking down. In that case, the body will produce from inside of the cell what is essentially what we term a virus, which is really a solvent or a cleaning agent. Because it's not alive, it cannot be killed. And it's like the heavy duty, the big guns. It'll come in and it'll take care of the toxicity really within the cell, or the dead and decaying matter that needs to be broken down. And they're really efficient. So it's like something that they can break down something that's about 50 times its size and make it to about 10% of that size or less, 5% of that size. Really, really efficient at breaking things down, excreting it, and then having the body take care of it. And that's why we feel sick. It's processing those excretions, those that broken down waste. That's what's happening. We're just processing that through the body. We create a lot of mucus to get that out. We might get the runs, we might throw up, we'll get headaches. That's the typical flu and cold, those symptoms. And those symptoms are not the illness. They are the final stage of a detoxification that might have been going on for years. 3 years, that 3 years earlier, that process could have started. And your final stage is the snotty, headache, runs, throwing up. That's the final stage, the last part of the detoxification.
Yeah. So what I wanted to go back to was a word that you used, and I want to hear you kind of tease apart this a little bit more. And it was the definition between something being alive and dead. So when we're saying that a virus isn't alive, how are we defining what the word alive means in that context?
Yeah, cool. Good question. So alive is generally the ability to reproduce, the ability to eat and excrete, having a nervous system, having a nucleus, like a cell nucleus. Those really define a living organism, such as an amoeba or a fungus or a parasite or something like that. So that's your definition of living. Without those faculties or those, just those faculties, nothing's alive by our own definition, by science and medicine's definition. So a virus has none of those things. A virus does not eat or excrete. It does not have a digestive system, a nervous system. It doesn't have a cell nucleus, any of those sorts of things. So technically it's not alive.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what I wanted to clarify, because I kind of got the sense that was what you meant. And I kind of got the sense that is the definition from the scientific and the medical paradigm, because from one perspective, I kind of look at everything as being alive, but maybe that's the wrong terminology to use. Maybe it's that everything has its own form of sentience or intelligence or own kind of... Yeah, maybe that's the better word to use. So let me say if I've got this understanding correctly based on what you've said. So viruses are created within or exist within our cells, or they're brought out in a response to a stimulus. And it's a virus is something already in our bodies that aids in the detoxification process. When a cell becomes unhealthy, it secretes these kind of viral particulates, which I've also heard being articulated as exosomes, amongst other things. And they bond to these toxic particulates in the body, and then they signal to the body that needs to go through the cleansing and the clearing or the detoxification process to expel those toxic particulates. And that's where we see the symptoms that you mentioned, which are typically associated with someone being sick or being diseased, such as the fever, the cough, sweating, purging, shaking, diarrhea, so on and so forth.
The signaling though is more the other way around. The signaling is the body, the cell signaling to the body to excrete, to create a virus and to excrete, rather than the excretion signaling to the body. So it's that's the only thing that was the other way around.
Yeah, that makes sense.